From presidential spokesperson to President Ernie Abella is looking to be elected to the highest post in the land as he runs as an independent candidate. He hopes to bring a so-called new Philippines under his leadership. We get up close with Mr. Abella to talk about his platform. Thank you, sir, for joining us on The Final Word.
Thank you for inviting Rico.
Sir, the backbone of your platforms are based on three pillars: a fair society, a government that is felt by the people, and a strong nation. What will be your immediate actions to achieve these pillars if you become president?
Okay, there are at least three things that we'd like to give attention to. But first and foremost, let's say we will continue. No, we will continue with the past socioeconomic agenda of the current administration. But over and on top of that, we want to include these three things. Number one is the close participation of civil society, so that they can act as watchdogs, they can act as to look after projects and policies that need to be implemented. Secondly, of course, what we call yung gobyernong nararamdaman. No? The first one was patas na lipunan. The second one is gobyernong nararamdaman. Our major flagship here would be the Agri Powerhouse. The Agri Powerhouse, we'd like to set up first a board of agricultural investments, and to make sure that the agricultural industry, which has practically about 23 to 26 million people who are below poverty level, and includes also about 12.5 million people who go to bed hungry every night, which is what we'd like to give attention to give a focus on, that after 6 years, the whole this 12.5 million Filipinos who go to bed hungry at night would be eradicated, and they would be living a much better life. Thirdly, of course, is the matatag na bayan. Matatag na bayan is basically we understand that the focus or the strength of a resilient nation is its people. And we would like to be able to raise up what we'd call a national volunteer corps, equivalent, for example, to the Peace Corps, but this would have a domestic function, helping out building communities, helping in the big task of nation building by, for example, helping out in primary and secondary students to gain mastery in reading, writing, arithmetic, helping disaster hit areas, and of course to be able to help build a more confident national identity. So three of them, Rico: patas na lipunan, gobyernong nararamdaman, matatag na bayan.
Comprehensive platform, Mr. Abella, if you indeed become president. But on your first day in office, what will be your first executive order that will integrate all of these three pillars?
Well, we'd like to be able to establish, for example, the first executive order would be to set up, of course, what they call the Board of Agriculture Investments, of course, and to meet with and to be able to mobilize, for example, mobilize the greater activity of civil society, and of course the aspect of volunteer corps. So we'd like to be able to put that in executive to be able to activate that as soon as possible.
And of course, we just saw the recent jobless numbers. It has increased in the month of December, and they expect the numbers to get worse in the first months of 2022. And the agri sector is the one that's already been hurt the most. So how do you plan to create more jobs? How do you plan to boost the economy in your first 6 months in office?
Of course, it would deeply help. No, if, for example, the reopening of the schools that would open doors for MSMEs. The other one is to, of course, the activation, like you just announced earlier, the reopening of the tourism industry and also the hospitality industry. It would greatly help in giving, in bringing back the jobs that we lost over the past 2 years. So the activation of tourism, the hospitality industry, the opening of schools wherever there is a low COVID incidence area, and of course to create a National Recovery and Resilience Council, an NRRC, to be headed, of course, by NEDA, assisted by an advisory committee of a private sector to manage trade-offs between job creation and social protection.
Mr. Abella, over the past few years, corruption has been front and center in this administration. And over the past decade, it has been a systemic problem in our bureaucracy. If you become president, how should we fight corruption?
Like I said earlier, one of the first things that we'll be signing into office, is the activation of civil society. This is going to be another aspect of our administration, because one of the things that we've realized is that it shouldn't just be on the shoulders of the president. It should be a shared responsibility, a shared responsibility wherein civil society actually participates in local government units in order to be able to look after the administration of financial funds. For example, local job creation, the tendering of pre-qualification bids. There needs to be an extra eye looking after the government day-to-day activities on the local level. Because the president cannot be overseeing all of those areas, but we need to be able, I keep calling it a rebalancing.
Right.
If a rebalancing of power where you have government, big business, and other related activities there, but it needs to be rebalanced by a very active civil society.
Yes.
Aside from that, of course, we also want to be able to implement institutional changes, institutional reforms, among other things, randomized testing for randomized audits for institutions of interest.
But Mr. Abella, if civil society tells you that several of your cabinet secretaries are corrupt, will you fire them and will you put them behind bars?
Rico, that's a very interesting question, but that brings up another aspect of what you'd like to do. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be relying solely on people that I know or are close to me. But actually, what we're going to do is we're going to have a very strict vetting program based on three things. Number one, the cabinet secretary should have the intelligence and skill. Number three is that they will have the energy to do that. But number one is they need to have integrity, and that means to say that they'll be strictly vetted. And but having said that they go through a strict vetting process, we will also, if you ask, will we put them in jail? If proven guilty, they will have to face the law.
And being the former spokesperson of President Duterte, will you reappoint if you go through this vetting process that they are qualified? Will you reappoint or recycle Duterte officials if you become president?
If they fit the job, we could. But also everything goes through a vetting process. Everything goes through a strict vetting process.
Let's now take a look at the war on drugs. How should the government fight this war? Your previous boss adopted an ironclad, no-nonsense, anti-drug policy. Will you do the same?
Correct. Ganito. For example, I appreciate this vision, which is number one, a comfortable life for all, which is based on inclusive prosperity, and secondly, an orderly society, which includes anti-crime, anti-corruption, and anti-drugs. Now, in essence, we would still adopt the same principle that drugs are a menace to society. However, what we would like to do is to do it, the way he carried on, of course, is according to his governance style. But we would continue the same anti-drug campaign by implementing it in a manner that is more quiet, less dramatic, and but is equally firm.
On the form of government, during this administration, there have been attempts to shift from the current form to federalism. But
Yes.
the Duterte administration has been unsuccessful. If you become president, would you want us to be a federal-run government?
Well, there are how do you put it? There are advantages. If you look at Germany, for example, they had an excellent leader who stayed for 18 years. But of course, that in 6 years you can only achieve so much. However, what we would like to do is maybe take steps incrementally and maybe begin with the party reform, reforming the party system first.
Mr. Abella, surveys are showing more familiar names leading the presidential race.
Yes.
You're up against longtime political personalities. This will be
Yes.
an uphill battle for you.
It is.
And are you willing to stand down and support a winnable candidate? Or will you fight it out till the very end?
Let's put it this way. The reason why I'm here is because I have a vision and I believe I know where to bring the whole nation to. It's not a question of supporting just this person or that person just for winnability. I'm fighting for a vision. I'm standing for a vision, and I believe that it can be achieved.
And what will be your priority bills for Congress to pass if you become president?
Again, the whole aspect of supporting the agribusiness, of course, supporting, making sure, for example, that we become an agricultural powerhouse, and then that would be a major priority and of course, that would include renewable energy and also encouraging the arts and entertainment industry to become a marketing arm and for the export industry. So we would like to be able to pass laws that will give better support to these areas, for example, tourism, arts and entertainment, and renewable energy.
Presidential candidate Ernie Abella, we will be right back with you for our up-close conversation, and we'll also give you the latest on Tony Gonzaga, who is still the talk of the town after a controversial hosting stint. Some celebrities took to social media to express their disappointment. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. This is the final word on CNN Philippines. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rico Hizon. Mr. Abella, we would now like you to ask you several questions, and please only give us a yes or a no answer. Here's the first question, Mr. Abella. If you become president, will you make it mandatory for yourself, the vice president, the cabinet, and members of Congress to reveal to the public their statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth, or SALIN?
Yes.
Will you allow the International Criminal Court to investigate President Duterte?
No, for the plain and simple reason that our courts work.
Do you support lifting foreign ownership limits in the Constitution?
Say that again.
Will you,
Do I support?
Will you allow or will you support lifting foreign ownership limits in the Constitution, wherein you will call for a Constitutional Convention.
Yeah, right. Not 100%.
Do you favor the reimposition of the death penalty for drug-related crimes?
Yes, for drug-related crimes, heinous crimes.
Do you favor resuming peace talks with communist rebels?
No, they should be done on the local level.
Will you allow joint oil exploration in the West Philippine Sea?
Business to business, yes.
Should the country be more aggressive in protecting its maritime rights in the West Philippine Sea, particularly against China?
It should be active in protecting our rights, whether it's China or any other power.
And finally, Mr. Abella, your final word to our kababayans on why you should be elected as the next president of the Philippines.
I believe that the Philippines has a call and a destiny, and that we could begin an actual Philippine century, Siglo Pilipino. If only we'd learn to embrace our responsibility and work, and we can have a continuous, if we could have a continuous journey together, evolving into a righteous, peaceful, and joyful nation, we can have what I call a century of Philippines rising. It is a vision that we can achieve, and it's a vision that we can all together work for. There is no need for despair. If we get our act together, we can fulfill our dreams.
Thank you very much for joining us on The Final Word, presidential candidate Ernie Abella.